What is up, people? This is Pitboss Review. This is that Pitboss coming at you live, large, and in charge to talk about current events through a certain lens that isn't necessarily getting a lot of attention from the mainstream media. So here we go. And you know, it's funny because we hear a lot out there about, I don't know, centrists, anybody who is, I guess, right of being a radical leftist. And they've got all these catchphrase names for us, and they've got all the condescension they want to throw at us. And it's frustrating for me because this is the real alternative. Like, I grew up a real punk rocker. And when we were growing up, we really believed in a world that we could, have equality regardless of your orientation or your gender or your expression or all of these things. Like, it didn't really matter who you were. It was what you could do. And we believed in equality of opportunity. And now, and this is in the 90s, so like 30 years ago, I was an activist. I was a left-leaning activist. And then as I got older, I got like progressively more woke until I started realizing that they're now starting to talk about not an equality of opportunity, but an equality of outcomes, right? This is what we're talking about when they use words like equity and they use words like, diversity, equity, and inclusion in the workplace. They're essentially saying that there needs to be a level playing field and that those without skills need to be leveled up and those with exceptional skills need to be brought down a few notches because they're obviously, through their exceptional abilities or skills or qualities, are oppressing those people without skills, which is one of the most ridiculous narratives I've ever heard. Anybody who's worked in, I don't know, like a significant trade or any actually it could even be academia. It could be pretty much anywhere, knows that there are those that are skilled in this, this aptitude, and there are those that are less skilled. There are the fast, there are the slow, there are the tall, there are the short. And to pretend that we need to hobble the tall and fast to accommodate for the slow and short is ridiculous. It's ridiculous. You know, now if there was a job that the slow and short could do better than the tall and fast, more power to them. Go do that job. Find your watermark. Stick to it. Let's not pretend we belong where we don't belong. Because in this situation, if you really want to get to the bottom of it, that equity, that equality is a false icon. Because there is no such thing as real equality. No, two animals from the same species aren't the same speed or ability or agility. You could take a look at the biological imperative of mating. And the biological imperative of mating is a perfect example of this. That is why they develop, mating dances, flamboyant colors, and those with the best dance and the best color and the best demonstration of genetically favorable traits are those that are guaranteed to breed. And those that can't demonstrate those genetically favorable traits don't get a partner. And I guess that means they're incels. They're involuntarily celibate. This is like one of the most ridiculous terms I've heard in a very, very, very long time. The fact that guys that can't get laid somehow hopped on the whole victimhood train and wanted to give themselves a title that reflected their marginalization and their victimhood. And they said, I'm involuntarily celibate because I would volunteer to have sex, but no one will have sex with me. So this is a civil rights complaint. Well, I'm sorry, for whatever reason, nobody wants to fuck you, homie. That's that. And I guess there's, some of these forums, I guess these guys get together. I'm not an expert by any stretch of the imagination on incel culture. But some of these forums, these guys get together and they come up with strategies in order to make themselves more appealing to the lady folk. So they don't have to be involuntarily celibate. Maybe they might someday want to be celibate. They'll be voluntarily celibate. But in the meantime, they have things like, I guess, look maxing is one that they're talking about, which involves, grooming yourself and going to the gym and getting a goddamn haircut. These are not rocket surgery. And I guess it's 2025. We need to come up with some catchy, advertising slang term for basic hygiene. And so they call it look maxing. But something I found out interesting just today, actually, and I already, playing with ChatGPT, I already wrote an essay. I posted it on a fetish website, and I know it's going to bug a lot of people. But this term that I recently found out today was femcel. Femcel. And a femcel is the female involuntarily celibate. And I've run into these people a lot because my partner and I, we've been, together almost a decade now. We're out of the community, but I've met a lot of these femcels on these fetish websites where people go to talk about, in my case, my thing was a bit of Japanese rope, and other people are interested in other things. And that's why I have strong opinions on a lot of the alternative sexual arena, because I've seen the slippery slope and where this stuff can go. So in this community, I've seen a lot of people who otherwise would be labeled femcels. They show up and like the genetic lottery did not treat them well. Coupled with maybe personal habits and hygiene and, a lack of motivation to change their lot in life, they sign up to a free website and figure it is now a human right for them to be treated as a goddess. And that's cool. That's cool. You can identify however you want there. And there's literally a drop-down menu on some of these sites, so you can choose which identity or orientation you want. Just like real life now. You can go to university and choose your identity from a drop-down menu without any litmus test or proof of this is what you are. You just say, this is I am, and everybody has to go along with it. And it's a hands-off avenue across the board for any critical observation. If you say, oh, I'm non-binary, or I'm gender fluid, or, well, I'm a dominant, or I'm a whatever you identify as, nobody's allowed to question the validity of your claim in these communities. So essentially, unless, of course, you are a dominant heterosexual male, God forbid you happen to be, Caucasian, you are the devil. You are the worst dude that anybody has ever run into, and everybody reserves the right to pass judgment on you. You're the only person that everybody can call down, right? And there's no consequence for calling down you. But if you mention to somebody, hey man, your entire dating lineage that I've witnessed and people I know have all been men, but you're identifying as a lesbian. Why? Oh my God, you've got no right to question this. This is my identity. Well, yeah, okay, but why? You're a bigot. But like, how does this work? Like, or you say you're non-binary, but like now you're a lesbian. But a lesbian, by definition, is a woman interested in women, and most lesbians are interested in women. But you're non-binary, so you don't even believe in the binary. It gets so convoluted. It gets so complicated. And so many of these people tear apart the incel culture. Every dick pic asshole who shows up and his entire profile is a picture of his penis. Obviously, you need to check these guys. Get your head straight. I'm not pretending there's not an army of dudes that need to get their heads screwed on straight. I'm not pretending that. It's quite obvious. Anybody who's gone to any nightclub, any bar, any sports game, any sports bar is going to meet a fucking plethora of douchebags. Okay, I get it. You get it. Everybody gets it, except maybe the douchebags, right? So yes, there's a ton of dudes that need to do work. And a lot of these guys, when they can't get laid, turn into fucking douchebags, like real assholes. And I get that. But we don't consider what kind of assholes the girls that can't get laid turn into, right? We don't consider how they act when they can't get laid. So I love the fact that this term popped up in my feed today, and we had a conversation about it in my house with my daughter and my partner. And we said, well, what is a femcel? So we went down the rabbit hole and we looked up some characteristics. And, it's really strange that the public treatment between these two different but same categories of people. You have the incels, which are like the loser men that can't get laid because their hygiene's horrible and their attitude is precocious and they're just the worst dudes ever and they need to get checked. But then you've got these poor femcells who have self-esteem issues, and the patriarchy and the body shaming and the socio-political attitudes towards beauty culture are just holding them down, and we need to help them up. But fuck those men incels. They're pieces of shit that need to be pushed away and checked. There is two different narratives when you look up the research, the studies, the articles on these two different cultures, the incel versus the femcel. And I've seen these people in full-on action in the fetish community. It's insane because they're misandrist, they hate men, they're calling you out all the time or calling you down all the time, they're condescending, they are arrogant, they are bullish, they are belligerent, and if you call them on anything, they suddenly shrivel up like you victimized them. So they are as condescending as you can imagine, but any moment you point out any part of their entire little thing, they end up running for help, calling you the bully, you're the horrible man. Case in point, as a tradesman, one time I found this person who's involved in my trade, and they do really bad work. You look at their portfolio, and I have no clue how they got a job doing this or how they can continue to get clients doing this. So you look on their website, they work almost exclusively with the genderqueer community. And I'm like, okay, well, that's kind of, I guess, if you need to get business like that. I also know people that ended up getting involved with like underground, like outlaw stuff in order to get business. But either way, it's kind of a bit of a cop-out. Why don't you just pick up your tools and work on your skill set, right? So I'm looking at this person's website, and they can help you manage your business. And that's their other side gig. Other than doing the work they do, they actually are a management consultant. So I clicked on that link and I find out how they manage. And they specialize in helping you overhaul your business to make it more inclusive for the special needs crowd. For the gender crowd, for the neurodivergent crowd, for the voluntarily marginalized, for anybody that doesn't want to be challenged in life. They're going to basically you can hire them to come and bubble wrap your business. And this is ridiculous. So I mentioned it. I'm like, hey, I notice your portfolio sucks, and your side gig is helping other people just create safe spaces. It's not really having anything to do with the trade. And if you put half that energy into safe spacing reality that you did into your skill set, maybe you wouldn't suck. And we went back and forth for a little while, and eventually, this is a non-binary individual according to their profile, and eventually this person says, it must make you feel like a real man to bully a woman. So a non-binary person, the thems, the they-thems, decides that he's going to tell me that I must feel like a real man for bullying a woman. Well, first off, I'm not bullying you. I'm calling you out on what I consider a ridiculous example of my trade. I'm a tradesman talking to another tradesperson. Secondly, in a minute ago, and all throughout your profile, there's this rhetoric about how we're all equal, we need equity, we're all in the same fight. Anything you can do, I can do at least as good. I'm non-binary, I'm beyond the binary of male and female. But as soon as you're challenged, you retreat to that fragile, feminine, I need to be protected personal identity. And I find that incredibly hypocritical, incredibly amusing and hypocritical. I'd like to see more non-binary born as female bouncers. I'd like to see more non-binary born as female, security guards at dangerous malls, right? Because when the heavy lifting comes around, there's no question on who gets called up. But once it comes time to divvy out the rewards, you're right there at the lineup, right? You're there to get the plate, but you're not there to gather the food. And I find that really, really interesting. So in my life right now, I've kind of got a tolerance level that's very low for, like, I guess what you would call this, what used to be called the social justice culture, what is now called the woke culture, although I hear that's a slang. They like to use the term progressive, which is really fucking strange for some of the stuff they're putting on the table. It blows my mind what some of these people consider progressive. But in my world, in my home, in my business, in my periphery, across the board, my peer group, all of it, the gates are tightly locked. There's a lot of people that will not get past the gates in my world. And it's funny because I had this conversation. It kind of got hot with a friend where I just said, like, nope, if I had known this person's personal identity and stuff like that, nope, that wouldn't have happened. They definitely wouldn't have been attending this event. They definitely wouldn't have been coming with us anywhere. And they're like, well, why not? I'm like, well, why would you hire a communist? Why would you hire somebody who's already wearing on their sleeve that they want to destroy what they call dominant paradigms, right? But all that really is, when you say dominant paradigm, is normal. Like, that's it. It's normal. It is how things are done to everybody that is present, except maybe the 5%. And that 5% feel left out, so they say that they're protesting a dominant narrative. The dominant narrative. They got to push that down. Well, the dominant narrative is only dominant because it works for most of them, or that it was established by the people that meet that criteria. If I go to Japan, I'm not going to be surprised if they don't want to speak English. I'm not being oppressed by a dominant narrative. I'm in their culture. You know, they built the society. I'm there for a reason because I enjoy that part of the society. The very least I can do is try to assimilate to what their normal life is. But there's a group of these people, they wear it on their sleeve. I'm protesting the dominant narrative, and if you question it, you're a bigot. Well, it kind of makes me wonder, what if I don't consent to participating in this? I withdraw my consent from participating in your little imaginary worldview. Are you still allowed to impose it non-consensually upon me? And this is something I'm really interested in asking somebody someday, because essentially they don't realize that they're non-consensually imposing their views on me or anybody who doesn't want to participate. And if you say, I don't want to participate, they call you names, they tear you down, they try to literally hurt you in one way or another. You know, some of them will physically attack you. Some of them will just try to attack your income or your livelihood or your employment or your relationships or your family. That's what doxing essentially is. If they could find you and they put your personal information out there, where you live, where you work, what you look like, what your full name is, what you drive, that is an invitation for the most unhinged people that are on this anonymous monster we call the internet to find you and injure you. They want people at your front door with a bat or worse, looking for you by name, and that's why they put your personal information out there. I've had people try to dox me, and it's funny. These people are legitimately like Government of Canada employees, and they are unhinged, woke, whack jobs who've created unhinged, woke, whack children. And as soon as you disagree with them, they start doing the most toxic things. Like they want to put your personal information out there online. So some radical will either come find you and injure you, or people will boycott you, or people will get you fired from your jobs, or they can arrange some sort of protest to stop you from having an opinion that's different than theirs. And regardless of evidence you have about their opinion being toxic, their opinion being damaging, their opinion not holding water in like a free, good faith debate, they inevitably turn to the attack. And it's really strange because they keep screaming fascist, fascist, fascist at anybody with a rational counterpoint. So if you're still saying men can't have babies, oh my God, you fascist. I'm just a normal person from 15 years ago, man. Well, that's fascism. It's a dominant narrative we need to overthrow. You're an oppressor. Oh, an oppressor of what? An oppressor of what? Like, really, who's being held down? You don't want me in your space. That's cool. And I'm not even bitching. If you don't want me in your club, you don't want me in your business, you don't want me in your house, you don't want me around you in your relationship, sweet. That's great. You do you and I'll do me. And hey, that's, if you want segregation, that might work. Cool. If you really want to do your thing over there and you don't want anything to do with a person like me, cool. Now, can I reserve that same right? Can I reserve the right to be with a tribe of people like me and we gatekeep to the equal level on the basis of, I don't know, religion or ethnicity or orientation or identity? No, we can do that because we don't like you, but you cannot do that because you don't like us. That's just the double standards that we've tried to establish as being normal life in 2025. And if you say anything against it, holy shit, does the whirlwind happen? And they're going to dogpile you and they're going to, try to scream you down, put a sign in front of your face, fill up like your emails. They're going to fill up your phone messages. They're going to just blow it up. They're going to set it up where somebody or something, a computer thing is calling you through all hours of the night. They have all the tactics in the world to utterly try to upset your life, to cause harm, to cause damage, to really mess with you, while they accuse the centrists of being these violent hate mongers that want them all dead. Right? If you say, sorry, man, I just don't accept that as being reality, I don't want to participate. Well, it's because you're a hate monger and want me dead. So you gotta wonder about a person who's walking around day in, day out, who thinks that half of the world wants them dead. That everybody wants me dead. They want me dead. They want me killed. They want me put in a camp and gassed. They want me this. They want me that. And this is their waking mental state. Is one of perpetual victimhood of being, ridiculously oppressed. But is it true? Is it true? Like, you're living in North America. You have a $1,000 iPhone. You've got, a MacBook you're typing on while you're drinking your $7 latte. You are wearing, I'm sure, clothes made by some Indonesian slave child somewhere, or, some Chinese sweatshop. Your entire existence, even if you're renting, even if you're struggling, you can go into 7-Eleven and get food that is higher calorie density, more sugar, more salt, more fat than anything that the royalty of yesteryear would have eaten. The Middle Ages, like the poorest people in Canada, are living a better, more hygienic, more access to luxury life than the royalty of yesteryear. But we still throw around these terms like, I don't have privilege. I've been oppressed. Well, what exactly have you been oppressed from? Wait, you're not getting the exact same wage as me? But are you doing the same job? Have you established yourself in this industry? And this goes back to, I guess, the workplace. I've got a business or two. And every once in a while, some politico, that's what I like to call them, some politico, will try to weasel their way into the business, right? As a matter of fact, a coworker pointed out to me, he's like, you realize that half of this business is woke, right? I'm like, I am uncomfortably aware. I am uncomfortably aware how woke half of this business is, which is exactly why I will no longer hire any commies. I want people that work for a living, that are competent, that have merit, potentially with calluses on their hand from legitimate labor, to come in and be willing to show up on time, do their job efficiently with skill, have gratitude for what they're given, and make the customers happy before going home. That's all I ask for. Now, when we get into these recent academics, these people coming out of universities, because we live in a university town here. These people come out of these universities with all of these humanities education, these liberal arts humanities degrees and things, and then they try to get into the workforce with these grand ideas that they've been indoctrinated with for $10,000 a year. And they try to force this into different environments, right? They try to force it into punk rock. They tried to force it into the body modification world. They tried to force it into even like the fetish scene, which used to be, lots of master and slave play, which is now completely taboo. But so they come to the underworld and they're like, hey, I want to be involved. And wait a second, you're oppressing me now. Well, why are you here? Why are you here? Shouldn't you be trying to climb the corporate ladder? Shouldn't you be involved in that? No, they don't want to work. They don't want to work. So they come out with these liberal arts humanities degrees. They have ideas on things because they've never heard an alternative narrative. So the narrative that they've been fed, and it is a narrative, it's one of many, is that the Marxist narrative is that history of all mankind has been one of the oppressor being oppressed by the oppressed being oppressed by the oppressor. It's one of the have-nots being oppressed by the haves. And I think that's a flawed view. It's a possibility. Yes, it is a possibility. And if that is the way it is, well, guess what? That's the way it is. You could take a look at biology, and the fastest and the strongest and the most adaptable survive to breed, and the lame and the injured and the not adaptable don't get to breed. Nature's a cruel, cruel gardener. It culls those that cannot sprout and reach towards the sun. But the other side is, there's also this narrative of history that perhaps the most exceptional have tried to share the bounty of what they've earned from like a good hunt, or they've perhaps tried to share their skills or tried to teach people how to also become more exceptional, and they were met with resistance, or they were met with resentment. And then some of these people, I don't know, maybe after being ejected from a job or ejected from whatever, dodgeball in school, come up with a narrative that, oh, I could have done that too. I just was held back. I was just held down by that person. I'm a winner too. I just never got the opportunity to win because that person was just always winning and he stopped me from winning. And if you can repeat this long enough, you start believing your narrative of victimhood. So potentially, let's say there's a team, and the captain of the team is a captain for a reason. He's fast, he's strong, he's talented, and he keeps trying to show these people how to be fast, strong, and talented themselves. As a matter of fact, when they win a tournament, he shares the victory with everybody. He said, we did it. I didn't do it. We did it. And I did what I did for the greater good of all of us. And we all should strive to be exceptional. And then the people that can't be exceptional resent that, regardless of whether he's trying to help them, regardless of whether he's trying to share, regardless whether he set up a system where everybody can excel and learn if they just put in some effort. And they resent it, and they continue to resent it, and then they want to overthrow the captain. So the Marxist and communist ideology is that the workers all need to seize the means of production from the business owners, because the bourgeoisie, the business owners, the upper class, are oppressing the proletariat, the worker. And the proletariats must rise up and seize the means of production, because all of history is one of economy. Our destiny is economy, that there is no greater good than the free market, or than the market of buying and selling, and the workers need to own the means of production, regardless of whether they established the means of production. They didn't make the business. They just seize it from the person who put all the time, energy, skills into building it and putting it together and hiring them. And then suddenly they just need to overthrow it because this person isn't worthy of earning anything off of their labor, right? That's exploitation. It's the haves and the have-nots, the oppressor and the oppressed. So the idea of bringing somebody with that ideology, that flawed ideology that says history is predicated on the haves versus the have-nots, the oppressor versus the oppressed, the business owner is the exploiter of those that work for him. Why would you hire somebody like that? Why would you bring somebody like that into any organization when they're already wearing every symbol of fuck you? You don't own me, I'm not going to listen, and every chance I get, I'm going to monkey wrench your operation. Why do that? Why even enter into an engagement with an individual like that? because they're wearing it on their sleeve. They might as well be wearing a hammer and sickle t-shirt with "fuck your business" coming to your job interview. When you allow certain personalities and certain identities and certain personality traits in the door into your life, you also allow every bit of baggage they're bringing. Every psychological angle, every, socio-political angle, everything they're bringing in, any drug habits, any lack of competency, you bring that into your periphery, and you will suffer the consequences of what happens there. And so if you look at any, like, say, a failing business, right? A failing or a floundering business reflects being run by a flailing or floundering leader. And this is equally applicable to cities and nations and cultures. Flailing and floundering nations are run by shit shows. They're run by idiots. They're run by incompetent leaders. And those communities that have fallen into disarray and they're covered in garbage and like they stink and like it's dangerous to go there after dark are operated and comprised by people like that. And those people that don't want to be like that either pull up the tent pegs and get the hell out of there, or they struggle like tooth and nail to change the environment they're finding themselves in. I get asked a lot by those that are close to me why I take all of this so seriously, why I even do a podcast, why I run the Instagram page, why I'm writing the book, all of this stuff, because this is a legitimate thing. If we don't take a stand when we see things going wrong, we have no right to complain when we're basically without any of the things that we were struggling for. When the world around us no longer resembles the one we grew up in because everybody was too lazy to defend what was good and right. And it's to the point where we're seeing urban flight. Moral, rational people are running away from city centers because they're being overrun by immorality, by fucked up value systems, because there's a ton of people coming into those larger urban centers with an incompatible value system to the culture they're moving into. And then there's inevitable conflict. You get riots in the street, you get violence outside businesses, you get shoplifting, you get garbage everywhere. There's homelessness like explodes. And then when people look around, why did this change so quickly in such a short time? Because you weren't willing to defend it. You weren't willing to say the uncomfortable thing. You weren't willing to stand up and say, enough is enough. I don't believe in this, and somebody needs to say it. There's certain things that I will, choose as the hill to die on. To me, the big one, the real big one, is I'm not going to accept or play into people's imaginary identities. I'm sorry, I just won't. Congratulations, you can live however you wish. You can exist in your own little world however you wish. That's your prerogative in a free and liberal society. You can love whoever you want. You can marry whoever you want. But you don't get to tell me that I have to participate or I'm oppressing you. Because technically you're violating my consent. You're not giving me agency and autonomy. You're insisting I am involved. And I could go off for a very long time on examples of how this has manifested in contemporary, gender arenas specifically. But if it's the one psychological delusion that we affirm for some reason. Hey, this thing I believe is completely counter to the objective shared reality we all share. But if I repeat it enough and I can gather an army to repeat it, then everybody starts repeating this falsehood and this unreality. We can pretend it's reality long enough, then you are the weirdo when you stand up and say, hey man, the emperor wears no clothes. This is not real. I'm not sure if you guys, I use this term a lot. The emperor wears no clothes, and it feels like I'm the last guy yelling it. And I think it's important to, maybe you're not familiar with this story. I don't know all of it, but basically a con man comes into this kingdom and he goes up to the emperor and he says, I'm going to make you a set of clothing that is so fine that you have to be very, very intelligent to see it. Idiots can't see this clothes, but they're invisible, or no, they're only visible to like the upper echelon and the most educated and the most elite. And here you go. And he puts on basically nothing. And the emperor's walking around naked, La-di-da, don't you love my new clothes? I'm so elite, you can understand. You can see them, can't you? Because only the most intelligent can see my clothes. And everybody's like, oh, yes, I'm intelligent, and I'm definitely on board. Those are beautiful clothes, your emperor. Oh, I love your new wardrobe. I love your new outfit. And he's parading naked through the streets. And finally, some kid who's too naive to know he's supposed to play along stands up, and he's like, the emperor's wearing no clothes. The emperor wears no clothes. And as soon as that one child says it, somebody next to him is like, the emperor isn't wearing any clothes. Why have we been pretending that the emperor's wearing clothes? And this is where we're at in 2025. And I won't say it. Because if I agree to that, I am caving to an unreality for the sake of an unreality. I don't know who's behind it. I don't know what the incentive is for having everybody pretend that reality isn't reality. Men can't have babies. Women that pretend they're men can have babies. It's also weird because women that pretend they're men do not go to male prisons when they get arrested. We say the gender, this whole construct, this gender construct is like sacrosanct. We're not supposed to touch it. It's like, oh, what they claim they are is real, and no matter what, until they get arrested. Women with dicks get sent to women's prison, and then men with vaginas get sent to women's prison. It kind of falls apart there, doesn't it, guys? Right? Why aren't you sending the trans men to men's male prison? And one of my friends, he's kind of a socialist, he mentioned, he's like, well, because of sexual assault. I'm like, wow, you haven't given a shit about little guys that have been raped for the last 150 years. Why start now, right? Oh, wait, because it doesn't hold water. The narrative doesn't hold water. And Buddy's like, oh, man, it's a complicated situation. I'm like, no, it's not. It's only complicated for those people that want to make it complicated. They want to make this convoluted and complicated with the goal of dismantling dominant paradigms or dismantling whatever is normal. If you look into queer theory, that is essentially it. You know, you've got LGB, you know, you're lesbian, you're gay, you're bisexual. Okay, those are orientations. And everything after that becomes an identity. And when you get to the Q, that's a queer. That's queer. That means I'm not vanilla. I'm not mainstream, but I don't really like being put into the categorization of lesbian, gay, queer, or lesbian, gay, bisexual. I'm queer. So queer theory is predicated on like undermining and dismantling what is considered normal, biological sex, right? So if you're doing it weird, you're queer. And those theorists, the queer theorists, where's the logical conclusion to this go? How far are we going to allow queer theory to go where it's cool to do this with your dick, it's cool to do this with your mouth, it's cool to do this with your asshole or your vagina? How far do we allow that? Do we stop at humans? Do we stop at adults? You know, do we stop at consent? How far do we allow that to go? Like, to what level do we allow consenting adults to do things to each other? You know, there was this case in Germany where a guy wanted to be cannibalized, and he went on a forum and he met another guy who wanted to cannibalize somebody. So they met, the one guy killed himself, the other guy ate him. Well, that was consenting adults. Was that okay? What about, I've got a book in the body modification scene about people that voluntarily castrate themselves to be slaves for their masters. Well, that's consenting adults. When do we consider it a psychological issue, right? Could we call it a psychological issue when somehow 10-year-olds are being convinced that they're another gender and they should probably cut their tits or their dick off? When do we call that a child abuse? I've got a pretty firm belief that in the near enough future, maybe a little further in the future, we're going to look back at the systemic brainwashing, psychological manipulation, and mutilation of children as being equally horrific as like lobotomizing people, or the Tuskegee experiments where they injected random people with syphilis to see the results. It's an experiment. And I think we also need to remember that it's also a profitable experiment. You know, hormones aren't cheap for the rest of your life. Puberty blockers cost a lot. When you have, implants or pretty significant surgery or replacements, or innies turn to outies and outies turn to innies, you have to take medicine for quite a while, if not forever, to stop that surgery from rejecting. There's ongoing profit-based industries to keep all of this in operation, right? There's a lot of people making a lot of money from this, so why change it? There's no money in the cure. There's only money in the medicine. That's been said by, I think it was Chris Rock said that. So let's think about this for a second. Like, if suddenly, I've got a book over here from 1987, and it's Abnormal Psychology. And in 1987, gender dissociation was affected 1 in 100,000 people. People identified as being the other gender. And it was obviously an abnormal psychology book, so it's considered a pathology. It's a psychological issue. So 1 in 100,000 people in 87. So here we are 30 years later, and we've got 4 or 5 in my daughter's classroom. Each class has at least like 1 or 2 people that identify, at least, as being like non-binary, if not trans. What happened? Are you saying this is an organic evolution in an entire culture in North America that only happens in like Western educated, industrialized, secular, liberal societies? That's just an organic evolution, like autism? And if it's an organic evolution, why are we just affirming it instead of asking what the fuck's going on? What's causing all these random children to be born with the wrong brain in the wrong body? Like, if it's a legitimate health concern, where is the studies saying what's going on with our children? Why is this happening? There's all of these children being born in the wrong bodies. We should put an investigation out. We should really get to the bottom of this. If suddenly we had children all being born with 3 eyes, we'd want to get to the bottom of it. Or if they got born with 6 fingers or 3 fingers, we'd want to get to the bottom of it. We'd say, holy shit, we need to fix this. We need to figure out the root cause of what's causing this sudden organic evolution. We need to figure out what's going on. But we haven't. We just say, affirm it. Affirm it. Help them. Help them. We don't want to cure it. We don't want to really examine it critically. We want to affirm it. It's profitable to affirm. It's emotionally feel good, especially if you can write the narrative that they've been victimized somehow, because like every woman they're empathetic, they're emotional this way, and they wouldn't want to hurt anybody. They want to defend the people that have been victimized, because many of them have been victimized in the past, and somebody needs to protect the victim. So the more you could frame yourself as a victim, the more support you're going to get from these well-meaning moms and aunts and do-gooders on Facebook. So where does this narrative end, though? And where does it come from? If this is an organic evolution, why aren't we investigating why it's happening? Why aren't we trying to find a cure so no more children are ending up born in the wrong bodies? Wouldn't you want that to stop? Let's find out what's going on and cure it. Or if it's a social contagion, why aren't we investigating that? Well, first off, if it's a social contagion, then all of the narrative that they've been propagating for the last decade about why it's legitimate to allow minors to alter their body forever, mutilate themselves, become sterile. That narrative goes out the window if it isn't an organic evolution and it's not legitimate, which it isn't. Let's just be honest. Let's just be honest. Fem cells in these communities are choosing non-binary or gender fluid to drop down from the drop-down menu in order to appear more interesting. They could suddenly become political and blame the patriarchy for them not getting laid. It's not organic. Everybody in the room knows that the elephant is there, but nobody's willing to say it out loud. I know you're a girl. You know you're a girl. Your boyfriend knows you're a girl. The last 3 boyfriends that you've had know you're a girl, but you're non-binary? They know? That's really strange. It's not true. And by claiming this, you're just trying to subvert dominant paradigms, which means dismantle the normal. So this critical theory intersecting levels of oppression, the kyriarchy. This critical theory is essentially about criticizing whatever is normal and replacing it with what? The new normal? Is this what they would have? The new normal is that you can be whatever you want and no one's got a right to contend it? Because that's a very slippery slope. Because where does it end? I remember reading this article or about, I think it was more the headline and like snippets about these women that put on, LGBTQIA, WXYZ, and women's financial seminar. It was like free to attend, and it was kind of like high-end speakers. And you could either be a biological woman or some queer individual, and you were allowed in. So suddenly, all of these like frat bros or these university guys just checked gender queer on their application and showed up. They didn't have to change anything, You just show up dressed however. And no, I'm genderqueer. Well, what are they going to say? Prove it? And this article was how upset they were that people were misusing this identity for personal gain. Really? Because that's exactly what we're saying. People are misusing this identity for personal gain. It's not legitimate. There's social clout attached to it. You get a pat on the back from your echo chamber. There's employment to be gained from this. There's employment to be secured from this. There's all kinds of reasons that people are claiming this. It is not legitimate in their heart of hearts. But if you say so, of course, you're a total hate monger. You're a bigot. You don't want that. You don't want that. Because, of course, all of this is about dismantling normalcy. It's about dismantling the normal. But they haven't figured out, or they have figured out and they won't tell us what they want to replace normal with. Do they want it so bad that people will clamor for militant, like, lashback? Like, will the homelessness and the gender confusion and the crime and the filth and the contrary value systems being imported get to the degree where people clamor for a police state when without these things they never would have? Is it a possibility? Of course it's a possibility. There's lots of possibilities here. But it would mean an orchestrated conspiracy. And, I tend to lean to the conspiracy side of things, but not so much to think that there's any group that's strong enough to really plan that out in advance. I do remember when I was on Twitter that I saw this guy, and it was when the Chinese president was heading to San Francisco. And this guy was saying in 2 weeks they were able to at least temporarily solve the homeless crisis, find homes or find places for them. The streets were suddenly clean, no more tents, no more, people laying in the gutter. There was police on every corner with machine guns. There was police in the subway stations and on the trains. And he said, you could have done this at any time, but you chose not to. So that was kind of his angle. This problem could have been solved, but they choose not to. And what I see when I see this is somebody who's actually happy that there is a police presence to that degree. They've made it so bad that people start clamoring for security that they're giving up responsibility and liberty, right? They just want security. They want surveillance. They want police. They want, monitoring, right? And they're willing to give up their freedom because things have gotten so bad. What is that called? I think it's like controlled opposition. You make things over here so bad on one side that people clamor for the other side. And that other side is the inevitable swing. That's the inevitable swing for radical leftism is authoritarian right wing. That's it. That's it. Like these people, they're at these rallies or anybody they disagree with, they scream fascist, fascist, fascist. Well, a regular centrist also has an invested interest in control or order and cleanliness in their society. Law and order is a pretty nice place to live. It doesn't need to be an overarching militant law and order, but just normal law and order. But the more crime that you tolerate, the more people clamor for a more militant law. And the more these people create chaos in the streets, the more people will clamor for a real reactionary lashback. If you're burning buildings and overturning cop cars and dropping bricks on cops, and you're screaming and blocking traffic, and you're not letting people like get to work, or you're interrupting their daily lives, those normal people, they're going to want a nastier dominant paradigm. They're going to clamor for the cops to go in with billy clubs and level all of you. They're going to want hard deportation. They're going to want all the things that you're worried about and you're screaming at them now because of what you're doing, because of your screaming. The radical left, they create the reactionary fascism that they're screaming that they hate. Let me explain this again. The radical left, with all of their screaming and all of their disorder and all the chaos they bring to like the urban landscape and the academic landscape and the workforce and anywhere that you have to run into these people create the environment and the attitude that allows reactionary fascism to come into play. If they relaxed, the centrists would just take over and say, okay, enough's enough. You've got your liberties. That's enough liberties for you right now. You don't get any more. But they're like, you fascist! And they scream, and they like, that centrist says, what the fuck? I just said no. And I'm like, they're attacking me. Well, I guess I need to be harder and harder. And every single centrist gets pushed to the right because you guys are so radical pushing from the left. You know, when it's Canada Day and people are like, genocide. This is a genocidal colonial settler nation. Man, I like living here. I have hot running water. We didn't have that 100 years ago, 50 years ago, 75 years ago. I've got electricity. I've got a supercomputer in my hand that's holding my notes right now. I've got a home recording studio right now. In a second, I can broadcast my opinions to a whole world with this magic little tool I have in my hand. How much privilege do I need? How much privilege do I need? Even the poorest people on the street, like my business is in the hood of our city. They all have cell phones and Bluetooth speakers. Like, what privileges are they missing out on? You know, the privileges of paying taxes, the privileges of having 30 to 40%, 50% of their income stripped away to pay for them. That's a privilege. I love that privilege. That's one of my favorite ones. It's funny because, like, on a same note, I know people that are involved in academia. I know students. I know professors. I'm friends with these people. You know, I know an Asian professor who teaches art. I know an indigenous professor who's an indigenous studies prof. I know all these people, and you know, the rational ones are all on the same board. We all know, yeah, for sure. There's a lot of douchebag guys that have treated women bad. Women have got a bad rap in a lot of ways. Indigenous people have been run through in Canada. We all know what's going on. But when you don't want to have a normal conversation and it's all dogma, no one's going to listen to you anymore, right? No one's going to respect you if it's all dogma and you can't have a good faith conversation anymore. My art professor, this one person I know out there, I'm kind of hesitant to talk about it, but I'll put it out there. Her profession is literally art. You know, she does art installations. She gets paid for doing art. And a lot of her stuff comes from like grants from the government of Canada. So technically it's taxpayer money. I'm paying for it. But in order to get these grants, she's got mandatory inclusivity, like things that she has to meet, like standards that she has to check off. And one of the inclusivity things, on top of including BIPOC people in the performance, is including some representative of the Two-Spirit or LGBTQIA, whatever, groups. And she told me straight up, she's like, whenever we get one of these, we race to find, you know, a flamboyant artistic gay man or a hardworking lesbian right off the bat. Because if we need somebody involved from that demographic, those are the two we really, really want. We might be lucky enough to find somebody who's bisexual, which would be probably, in my guess, a pretty good kind of middle ground. But she mentioned we do our best to avoid anything after the LGB. Because once you start getting into those extra alphabet letters, things exponentially get more complicated because monkey wrenches are always being thrown into the operation. The job never gets done. Everything is problematic because they're professional agitators. These people become professional activists. And if you're a revolutionary, if you're an activist, everything is your battleground. And if you even win, you find a new battle to fight. That's a fact. Like, Che Guevara, after they took Cuba, he headed off. He went to the next revolution. He didn't want an office job. He's like, I want to shoot people. I want to overthrow people. I'm a revolutionary. I got to go. I don't know which country he went to, but it's, for some reason, South Africa pops in my head, but I don't think that was it. You look at Israel. Israel got their land. The revolution's done. You got your land. Oh, no, the fight needs to happen. I still need to bulldoze. We need more. We're still being oppressed. We need more. Sure, I stole from you, and when you took it back and slapped me, you attacked me first. I need more. Because the revolutionary is never done being a revolutionary just because the revolution is finished. The revolutionary is a revolutionary, and these activists will be activists no matter who, what, where, when, and how the environment is. So if they're little marginalized identities and we're never included in anything, their complaining gets them so far that they have to be involved in this art project in order to get government grants to pay the people involved in the art project. It's still not good enough. So the art project is always problematic. Always problematic. No matter what you do, it's going to be problematic because these people are activists. So riddle me this, Batman. Why would you hire somebody like that? Why would you want them involved in your project? Personally, I would just say, oh, no, I'm queer. That's me. That's me. I was wild in my college years, so that's me. I meet that criteria. Nobody else. So it's kind of strange, like the idea of equity versus equality. I remember I read about this, I think he was an East Indian kind of prof or a scientist on one of the colleges down in the States, and he thought he was being really progressive. He had a limited amount of space for researchers on his study group, and he put it out there that your marks are like, I'll choose you blindly based on your work. If you know what you're doing, I don't care if you're up, down, left, right, black, green, yellow, purple, I will give you a position on this research team, and it's a paid position, and I will hire you regardless. If you can do the work, you're going to have a place on my team. And he thought that was very progressive. And by my 90s standards, it is. That's equality of opportunity. If you can do the job, you'll get the job. Regardless, you're not going to be held back by who you are or any form of bigotry that way. His funding was revoked because he refused to abide by the mandatory inclusivity policy, because he needed specific members from each demographic, regardless of whether they could do the work, versus his idea of if you can do the work, it doesn't matter what demographic you're from. So this is the difference between equity and equality. Equality of opportunity versus equality of outcome are two totally different things. The idea of equality means we all start at the start, and we're all allowed to race in the same race, and the people that win, doesn't matter who you are. The people that are the fastest, it doesn't matter where you are because we all started in the same place. And the people that are slowest, I guess it is what it is. Now, equity means that the slowest get to start 5 feet before the finish line, and the fastest have to start, 50 meters back. And that they consider that a good thing. To hobble the exceptional and to prop up the subpar. If you get a chance, I really suggest reading Anthem by Ayn Rand, or even Atlas Shrugs. I still need to work my way through Atlas Shrugs. But the premise of Atlas Shrugs is that all these titans of industry and these inventors and these really talented people start disappearing from mainstream society. They think that there's a kidnapper. All these really innovative individuals and like creative scientists, researchers, inventors, titans of industry, they're all disappearing. And they think that there's this huge kidnapping thing going on. And they can't do things without these people. These people run the show, but they're all going missing. And it turns out they are continually being hobbled and limited in what they can do and what they can create and what they can achieve by the collectivist attitude of the society they're living in. And they've been approached by a man who says, I'm going to take the shackles off you and let you achieve whatever you will. You could come with me and we'll create our new society. And it'll be a society of the exceptional, and we won't be hobbled by these people. And the society falls apart. The society falls apart because the talented are no longer carrying the untalented. The strong are no longer lifting up the weak. It's the mediocre trying to support the subpar. And this is essentially what happened in, I guess, the adult kink fetish community. There was once upon a time people that knew what they were doing, and they could do these high-end skills very safely, and they were very educated, and they would do education facilities for all of these people, or workshops for all of these people, until they got denigrated by the lowest common denominator enough that they stepped away and they no longer wanted to teach. And the quality of the skill set fell through the floor, and nobody was teaching anything except the principles of inclusivity. You go to a seminar, it's a socio-political indoctrination camp. It's not a how-to anymore, because nobody knows how to, because the people that knew how to didn't want to be involved with these anymore. And then they cry about the lack of quality, and they say that these people are gatekeeping them. I'm sorry, you did it to yourself. People didn't want to be involved in you. They didn't want to be engaged with you. They didn't want to teach you. They had no obligation to put themselves on the chopping block for your little fucking games you want to play. So the exceptionals step away and they disassociate from you and they go do their own thing. And then people will be like, why is there nothing exceptional anymore? Well, it was completely due to your own choices. And the radical inclusivity will create an environment that meritocracy was going to be a necessity. You know, if you put the wrong people in positions of power, infrastructures fall apart. Roads don't get built. Important construction falls apart. It's literally dangerous. But they were placed there because of the idea, this noble idea of inclusivity. The most fragile among us can't be expected to do the most resilient jobs. And that's kind of what they are. They're demanding to be at the helm of things they don't understand. You can't create a healthy society with unhealthy people. And we're dealing with a generation of leaders of tomorrow that are unprepared to hear the word no. No. You hear me? They don't want to be told no, and they think being told no is oppression because nobody's ever told them no in their life. I would wager that the vast majority of these individuals resent men largely because there was none in their households growing up. They probably had deadbeat fathers or, moms that kicked out the dads and badmouthed the dads their whole life. And they resent it. They get into academia, they join liberal sciences, they get into some gender studies, and they come out with this narrative that men are trash. Men are trash. And significant amount of these people are absolutely unhealthy individuals that meet the criteria of the femme cells. And they say men are trash. Men won't love me. Men don't find me attractive. Men made me feel bad about myself. Men weren't around for my mom or me growing up. Men are trash. And that becomes the new politics. They have no resilience because there was no man to dust them off and say, you're good. Keep going. Life sucks. Struggle through it. No stoicism, no resilience, no carry on. Stay calm. And you know what? Our society is going to fall apart if we don't do something about it. Society will, and it is. You can see it if you look around. Too many people are balls deep in the next liquor bottle or joint or bong or whatever convenient escape to look around and notice it. But it's happening. Or they sign up and they say, why are you so worried, man? I don't know. Just wait till there's mandatory prayers 5 times a day, right? Wait until there's literally blood in the streets between the two cultures of ultra-religious conservatism being imported from a foreign religion that none of us are prepared to deal with, to absolute borderline hedonistic Satanism, where if it feels good, it's okay, colliding on the streets of like what used to be a central nation. Right? And like, we used to have laws on the books to stop people from shooting up in the doorways of businesses, in our city at least. You couldn't smoke crack on the street. They would put you in jail, but they don't do that anymore. You know, I'm involved with a business association in my city, and they ask me, so why are you involved with this? I'm like, man, my only idea, like if we had any clout, would be to get the police to enforce the laws that are actually on the books. We don't need new laws. We just need to put people away for doing the things that are against the law again. If you steal from a business, you go to jail. If you smoke crack in front of a cop, you go to jail. If you shoot up in the doorway of my business, you go to jail. If you rob somebody or trash a vehicle or any of that stuff, you get caught and you get put in jail. Well, we don't have enough beds and da-da-da-da-da. Well, then figure it out. You know, there's railroads that could be built north. We got plenty of room above L'Orange. There's lots of room up there. And we need railroads built up there to get people there. Maybe if you're good, you get allowed back into society or an inside jail. It's insane, the stuff that we're dealing with. And I don't see that spiral getting any better anytime soon. So those people that do care, get involved. Get involved with your community associations. Get involved with your business associations. Have your opinion, even though it might be a fight, have your opinion heard. Put it out there. Man, I believe in you guys. And, you know, time's growing short. I don't know, like I'm a spiritual person, but I'm not fundamentally religious in any specific sect, but they're all kind of pointing to one direction, that there's a reckoning coming. You know, that things are kind of chaotic. They're kind of crazy, you know, from the top and from the bottom, from the left and from the right, you know. The fact that you got kids that want a goose step in here, you got other people that want the new gulags, you got the central bank digital currency coming down from the top where they're like, there's no borders. Well, man, yeah. Well, then then they're going to need their surveillance state and their military police. And then from the bottom, you got junkies coming up, you know, like, I'm going to rob you so I can get high. And then you're a normal human being, a tax-paying working guy right in the middle saying, what the fuck? What the fuck? Can I go to the mall and not watch a guy get stabbed in the face over some disgusting drug debt or gang shit? Can I live somewhere where that doesn't happen? Or do I have to be part of the urban flight to get away from the cities? And of course, you know, you go on there and they're like, that's white flight. Well, I don't know. Okay, if that's white flight, who's the people that are doing the crimes that we're running from? Right? I don't consider it ethnic, but hey, if you want to put it on the table, go ahead. In our city, they keep saying that the homelessness problem is an ethnicity problem. Well, shit, I guess if that's what you say, let's address the ethnicity issues. Oh, wait, you don't want to do that? That's another elephant in the room we're not supposed to talk about? Oh, okay, because it might include some accountability that everybody's trying to avoid, and only one person in this room is supposed to be accountable, the guy that looks and talks and works like me, but nobody else needs to be accountable for their own shortcomings? Oh, that's an interesting thing. Oh, I didn't know it was like that. I'll have to keep that in mind. That, you know, if I sucked a cock, does that get me off the accountability train? Oh, okay. What do I need to get off the accountability train? How many crimes do I need to be the victim of before I can claim that I've been traumatized and I can have a few toxic coping mechanisms and be let off the hook? How many robberies? You know, how many times does a knife need to be held to my face before I can say I've had enough trauma? How many family members need to get murdered? Right? How many times does my vehicle needs to be broken into? My land needs to be robbed? How many times do I need to be a victim of violence before I'm allowed to say, wow, you know, hey guys, maybe you need to be accountable for a change, because I've been doing my best to be a law-abiding, tax-paying human for a long time, and I've lost an awful lot of, like, sleep, energy, finances, you know, supporting scumbags that really don't want to get any better. Right? So yeah, get involved. Get involved on the neighborhood level. Take a look at actually who's on your community boards. You know, what ethics they're bringing to the table. What values are they bringing to the table? Are they the values that you grew up with? Are they the values of this country from 10, 15, 20 years ago? Or is that enough time to completely put things on their ear? I would like to believe that there's some way of saving this, but I don't know. Increasingly, I really, really wonder. I really, really wonder. And maybe that whole, like, I call it the urban flight. Maybe that's the only situation, you know, buy yourself a little plot of land, go in with some people, buy land, and just chop wood, carry water, grow vegetables, and hunt. If they allow you to have a hunting rifle, I guess. Yeah. If that's, if civilian disarmament isn't in full effect by that time, you know. Make friends with some indigenous communities. That's a good one. Yeah, for sure, because they've got a long-standing struggle towards some autonomy against these overarching systems of control. So, yep. So that's a Pitboss review. I know it's been a long time. I've been here, you know, doing a whole bunch of other stuff. I'll try and get these out a little bit more regularly. I don't even know if anybody listens. Half of this is just like a one-man therapy show, but I appreciate it. I appreciate the 3 of you that listen. If you have any questions, concerns, or comments, don't hesitate to reach out. Follow me at Pitboss Review on Instagram. And otherwise, yeah, stay safe. Do the right thing. Be a good human being. Read some good books. Follow a moral trajectory. Peace, love, and granola, people. Love you.